Welcome to the Legal Advice in Paradise podcast, brought to you by www.legaladviceinparadise.com. Even in one of the most beautiful places in the world, life can be litigious. On this podcast, the best and brightest legal minds gather to help you navigate your way through every legal question you may face. This program will help you know your rights, know what steps to take, and help you find the best legal representation, all in simple, easy to understand terms. And now, here's your host, Justine Gronwald.
Aloha everybody, this is Justine Gronwald of Legal Advice in Paradise, and today's episode I have the honor of having efisher here. Ethan's going to tell us an incredible story of his, and the reason I have him here is he's a Witness Wednesday guest, and as you know, Witness Wednesday are real life stories of real life people, and this is coming off my interview with Paul Cunney. You've probably seen episode number 1. We're going to have episode number 2 of Paul Cunney. He is one of the top DUI attorneys in Hawaii. And as I had my interview with Paul Cunney, we talked about the penalties of getting arrested, under the influence DUI charges. We went over penalties, first offense, second offense, third offense, and license revocation, the things that you have to go through with fees and all those sorts of things. However, we did not cover the ultimate consequence or penalty. And I'm going to let Ethan explain more, but before we go into his story and his incredible journey, I want to have him tell a little about himself and why he's here in Hawaii, because he's not from Hawaii. So we're just going to give you that opportunity, and then we'll get into his story. Okay, Ethan.
Hello, everyone. My name is Ethan Fisher, and I'm the president and speaker of a nonprofit called Life Consequences. We're out of Denver, Colorado. I'm here in Hawaii as my first trip after all my consequences from a DUI vehicular homicide. And I'm at the Sports Academy, Maui, basketball exposure camp put on by CEO Alan Walls. And he was a former coach of mine that invited me to come speak to his players about the tragic consequences of my actions as a student athlete through college. And so I'm out here in Hawaii and loving it, and just gave my speech to the kids, and
right.
Hopefully
it's very impactful.
Hopefully it changed a couple of their minds on what they're going to do for the rest of their lives. So.
And as you can hear in the background, we're in the locker room, obviously, but the camp right now is having a practice?
Right now they're doing the last 5-on-5 games of the day. We've been in here since 9 a.m.
And what time is it now?
It's 9 p.m. and we're still playing. It's been a very long camp, but we've got wonderful coaches here. We have, I think, 9 college coaches from all over the west side of the U.S. and Hawaii, and we're helping these players get better, and that's the whole goal behind this exposure camp. So cool. It's a great thing. It's fun. Basketball is awesome.
That's great. Well, we welcome you to Hawaii, and this is your first time here?
Yes, first time ever.
And as a free person?
And yes, even as a free person, it's even more. Okay. So this was not only a wonderful travel place, but I get to come coach basketball, and I'm free.
And basketball is what kept you alive?
Yeah, basketball is what kept me alive. And good grace of God upstairs. But
so why don't we just go into, I picked up so much from your story. It's a 40-minute presentation. If we go over a half an hour, that's okay. You talked about the snowball effect, and I want you to start at the beginning. You were only 8th grade.
My story begins to take shape in 8th grade when I was first offered to smoke weed and marijuana, and that snowball effect is, I tie it to the fact of the first time I said yes to something that I didn't want to do. And I didn't realize that smoking weed in 8th grade was going to snowball into a alcohol and drug dependency as a athlete, as a college athlete, as just a regular everyday person in society. How quick drugs and alcohol can alter your state of mind and who you are and who you become. And so from 8th grade on, my social use of marijuana to social use of alcohol became a dependency, to where it was not just something social that I was doing, but it was something that I needed to do in order to be social. And that all stems from peer pressure.
Right, you mentioned that to the young men outside. How old are the boys?
Anywhere from going into 9th grade to seniors in high school.
And that's when the peer pressure comes. You don't want to be a misfit, so you want to fit in. Inside of you tells you it's not the right thing to do, but because you want to fit in.
And that's the thing, especially people don't realize how much pressure is on high school athletes or any athlete. A lot of people think it's all fun and games, and there are benefits to being an athlete, but kids are put in positions to where if they don't act cool and they're a part of a sports team or something like that, they feel like they're letting down that perception of who they're supposed to of who they're supposed to be. And I know from my personal experience that you want to be that person that everybody wants you to be, and drugs and alcohol are that thing that allow you to be and break down your inhibitions, and you can act out and have fun without thinking that I'm not going to be cool, or I'm not going to be that person that everybody wants you to be.
Right.
And it is with these kids right now. This is really the hardest time for some of these kids, because they're young adults, being 8th grade all the way up to seniors in high school, where they have people looking up to them. They have people that want them to be, superstars, whatever sport they're in or who they are.
And some of them are naturally talented like you. I gathered from your story that it's, even though you were doing all of this, you were still good. And you mentioned that you couldn't even come close to your potential by doing these drugs and alcohol. Can you imagine if you...
I can't imagine. For me, I'm not naturally gifted in the sense of size and athleticism, but my desire to play and want to get better was what pushed me to be better than most people, because I wanted to be better. And I was never able to fulfill what I potentially could have been, because I would rather go out and drink and party and smoke. I mean, like I said in the speech, I was drinking until 3:30, 4:30 in the morning and going to practice at 5:30.
That's insane.
And I put on 30 pounds my freshman year from drinking 18 beers a night. And I was still starting at a junior college and putting up very good numbers, but I don't know how good I could have been if I would have stayed sober and lifted and worked out and done the things that most athletes do in order to take themselves to that next level. And when you're small and undersized like me, it's even harder when you don't lift and you don't work out to make it to those goals.
Now, when you say undersized, what is typically because my daughter played basketball, but that's like 6th grade. But for a guy, what is the preferable, the size, and how tall and whatever are you?
Well, I'm technically 5'10" and a half. Rosters put me at 6 foot, but I'm really 5'10". And I say I'm 5'10" and a half. I got to give myself the extra half. But for a typical guard that goes on to play Division I and a lot of Division II basketball, college coaches are looking for guards between 6 foot all the way up to 6'9" for point guards.
6'9", wow.
And I've had teams where I'm the smallest kid on on the team, and all my teammates are 6'1", 6'2", all the way up to 7 foot.
Wow.
And so when college coaches, they're always recruiting players based on their size. And like I mentioned with my coming out of high school, I was tiny. And I had to go to a junior college because I didn't mature as fast as everybody else. And I actually grew like 2 inches my freshman year in college, which wasn't a lot. Obviously, I'm still under 6 foot. But that athleticism and size is what gets people in the front door and getting looked at. And when you're smaller, you have to work that much harder for people to find you. And because I had that desire to get better, you know, that's what kept pushing me, even based off of my size. And you know, I never lifted a weight or did any of that stuff until after my accident, because I started realizing that it takes a lot of hard work to become the person that you want to be, and I already knew that I kind of missed my window of being able to hopefully play overseas or something like that, because I was obviously incarcerated.
Right.
And you know, those are one of those things where why I do speak now is to hopefully get some of these sophomores, juniors in high school to start realizing they have to start putting in the work now if they want that ultimate goal of going to a Division I basketball program or Division II even. And it takes a lot of hard work and effort, and they will never know their full potential unless they are giving it 100%.
Right,
you know,
right.
and I never did. I mean, I don't know how I did it. I mean, I was fundamentally sound and skilled and could shoot and handle the ball, but there's times I find myself in disbelief of what I did and what I was able to do that messed up. And you know, I kind of telling some of the kids today that'll always be one of my biggest personal regrets, is not knowing if I was really capable of competing at the highest level. And I'll never know. And that's going to be one of those things that I go to my grave like, man, I wish I would have done it this way, or I wish I would have done it that way. And you know, with speaking, that's why I'm hoping to, you know, stimulate one of these kids to be like, okay, I got to work my tail off to get there. And you know, and hopefully they'll see the potential and the power in doing that.
So take us back to when you started with the whole 8th grade peer pressure, because in your speech you mentioned how you were anti-weed, anti-anything, anti-drug, and then you went, you tell the story, what happened.
Well, ever since I was a little kid, most kids that play basketball always want to be in the NBA, and it doesn't matter who you are, where you come from. My dream as a kid was to play in the NBA, and I knew even as a kid that drinking, smoking, I was anti-cigarettes because I saw my grandma smoke. It was one of those things that even as a kid there was some internal thought that said you can't drink or smoke if you ever want to be anybody. And I did a great job all the way up until 8th grade. And that's when a lot of young men start to make bad decisions because their testosterone's flowing through their body and their adolescence. Adolescent boys don't make the best decisions in the world, and they succumb to peer pressure. And I wanted to be that cool kid, and I started hanging out with the wrong crowd that weren't my basketball buddies, that were outsiders, and at the time wannabe, you know, people were in the scene, you know, in 8th grade, and I started hanging out with the wrong guys that wanted to smoke weed and, you know, not go to class, and so I gave in, and it was all because I wanted to be unique in a sense. I've never been one to want to conform. I mean, and that was my way of thinking that I was going to be the cool kid, and I'm going to hang out with the kids that are doing the wrong thing and still be a basketball player. And he thinks he's, you know, cooler than everybody. And 8th grade, you don't know what's cool and what's not. You think you do.
Yeah.
And that's what led me to, you know, smoking and hanging out with kids that I shouldn't have been. And, you know, it went like that for a couple years until I got caught by my parents. And so my sophomore year in high school, I quit smoking weed. My parents were like, you know, get your act together. This is gonna mess up everything you've ever thought about doing. And I listened to him for a while, and good old peer pressure came back around. And you know, so my junior year being on varsity in a 5A basketball and starting as a junior in high school put me in a different social status. I was now one of the popular kids because I was on the varsity basketball team, and again, young adolescent boys don't make the best decisions, and succumbing to that peer pressure and wanting to go hang out and party. And you know, after losing my first game against my rival, you know, my brain shut off and said that I just want to release because I was so mad at losing, you know, as a competitor, and hanging out with a bunch of seniors that I shouldn't have been hanging out with, and they got me to drink that night. And because they were seniors, I wanted to fit in and couldn't tell myself no. And so, you know, peer pressure and its ugly head reared itself again. So it's one of those ugly things, peer pressure.
And you drank how much that first time? I couldn't believe you told me this, but and your speech is mind-blowing.
Yeah, that first night I grabbed a bottle of Jack Daniels and down in as much as I could. I mean, I know some other people had some drinks off of it, but I pretty much polished off a whole bottle of Jack Daniels my first night that I ever drank. And it wasn't with the intention of getting drunk or anything like that, because I didn't know what it was. It was, I didn't know what the effect was going to be. I honestly didn't. And when you drink for the first time, you don't know what you can handle. You don't know if it's, excuse me, I'm getting an itch in my nose. You don't know how much you can handle. And I thought it was just some liquid thing that you drink, and by the time I realized it, I was passed out on a toilet, or next to a toilet, with my buddy on one side and throwing up for about 8-9 hours. And it was, you know, you look back on it and it's like, would anybody in their right mind ever...
It's a miracle you didn't get alcohol poisoning. Or you probably did, but you survived it.
I survived it. I'm pretty sure I had alcohol poisoning. But you know, just like most people that drink, you hear them after they go out to the bars and stuff, they say, oh, I'm not going to drink again. And that's what I did. I said I wasn't going to drink again. And I can't remember the exact amount of time that happened, but I know I went a couple weeks before I drank again, because I was like, I don't want to do this. But then friends kept egging me on. You did it one time, let's go out. And then that whole being a junior and wanting to fit in with seniors and hanging out with senior girls and all that type of stuff, it makes your brain...
And again, this is high school.
High school.
Because I talked to Duke Iona. Duke Iona used to sit as a judge, family court. He was our lieutenant governor. He's now running for governor. He talked about this program to help with children and alcohol. And I shared this story with you. He said one of the saddest stories he heard was these 2 10-year-olds that died of alcohol poisoning. And you're in high school. The drinking is starting earlier and earlier, obviously.
Yeah. It's an issue, and the reason why it's such an issue is it's highly publicized in the media, of whether it's musicians or movies. They have people that drink and get high and do all that stuff, and it's the end thing to do, and it's influencing kids.
But they don't tell the consequences.
They don't tell the consequences.
No.
And the other part about it, and you know, just because of my situation, I finally realized how bad it is. But you look at it, there's an alcohol store, liquor store on almost every corner. And it is the easiest thing for anybody to get. 2 10-year-olds can get a hold of alcohol by going through their parents' cabin.
That's what Duke Iona said. You know, it's a legal drug. Parents typically don't lock it up because they don't think anything of it. You know.
No, and I mean, you think about 2 10-year-old kids. There's no cognizant.
Just like you. I mean, even as an older teenager, you had no idea how it was going to affect you.
No. And you know, step that back a couple of years. Kids don't know what they're going to do. They don't know the effects. And you know, and even with me, 11th grade, I didn't know what my effects were going to be. And honestly, I didn't know what the effects were going to be until the accident. And I was 23 years old and still couldn't give up alcohol and the consequences of drinking every single day to be a productive member of society. And that's the thing that scares me about alcohol. And anybody can get a hold of it, and it's on every street corner. And the thing with alcohol, it doesn't matter how many times you drink, or if it's your first time down to 1,000 times, there's always that chance that you're going to drink too much, blackout, not know what you're going to do, and hurt yourself, or worse, hurt somebody else, and go through the consequences of taking somebody's life. You know, the ultimate consequence, and what happened with me. And
you mentioned that you and your friends would get like down 16 beers, 18 beers a night.
Yeah.
And sometimes with vodka.
Yeah.
And later on, as you go through your story, you added even more to that. Not just the alcohol, but you did other things.
No, and that goes back to the whole snowball effect. The thing with drugs and alcohol is you see it in the media news with entertainment people and movie stars all the time. They don't realize how fast their life is involving alcohol or drugs. It just takes over their life, and before you know it,
out of control.
Yeah, and snowball. As soon as you take one drink, then all of a sudden you need 2 or 3 drinks to get drunk, and then all of a sudden you want to drink a whole entire bottle because you can do it. And you know, just you hear all those rumors about chasing the same high, and it's the truth.
It's the truth.
You want to, you know, the first time I did ecstasy was unbelievable. It was the coolest thing in the world, I thought. Well, the next time I did it, it wasn't the same. And so the next time I did it, I was like, well, when am I going to get that same? And it never comes. And so instead of just maybe doing 1 pill, now you're doing 2 or 3, and you never get the same effect, and you're always doing more and more on top of it because you're trying to get that high or that drunk back. And it's just it's a vicious cycle, and it doesn't have to be drugs in order to do that. I mean, alcohol is probably the worst drug out there because, like you were saying, it's a legal drug. And I, after all the stuff I've been through, I used to have to go to AA and Alcohol Anonymous, and I've seen so many people throw their lives away because they wanted to get drunk. And they've lost families, they've lost houses, they've lost family members. It's all because they wanted to keep drinking. And losing that stuff didn't stop them. And the majority of them, they go in, sober up for a couple of years, and something bad happens to them, and they go right back to their crutch and drinking again. It's, you know, trying to stress that point tonight, it's that first time you say yes to anything that you shouldn't do. I mean, if we want to say gateway, say once yes to drinking, you're going to say yes somewhere down the road.
Exactly. And my interview with Duke Iona again talked about gateway, you know, gateway drugs or just anything that gets you started.
Yeah.
And so lead us down the path, Laura. You're out of high school now. You're getting into colleges, and the whole drinking thing is just totally getting in the way of your basketball career.
Yeah. you know, when you get to college, as a freshman, you're on your own.
Mm-hmm.
This is the first time that you haven't had any parental guidance or people telling you what to do, and you know, with no parental guidance, the whole thought of just being able to get drunk every night was like, it was a cool
freedom
yeah,
thing.
it was a cool freedom thing. I didn't have to worry about anything. Like,
Yeah.
my thing was, okay, let's play card games all night long and hang out and drink and listen to music. And that was, for me, that was like the best thing in the world to me. You know, wasn't going to class, and even though I love basketball to death, basketball wasn't even my number one option. It was drinking. And I didn't realize that, because I would rather drink the night before than not drink and go to practice and perform. And you know, you think about it, alcohol was my number one priority over basketball and school. And you know, and it goes back to the whole snowball and layer upon layer of freedom, no parents, to 18 beers a night, and you know, drinking so much to where you basically become academically ineligible and can't play the following year, to traveling to another school and doing the whole thing over. You know, and you should know you have a problem when you go a whole entire semester and receive 4 Fs and a GPA of 0.0 because you quit attending school after the second week.
Yeah, that when you told that story about just being in school for 2 weeks.
Yeah, and it you know, when you're young and you think you're untouchable, you tend to make choices that aren't the smartest. And when I found out I wasn't going to be playing basketball that year, it was, I'm just going to drink. And I didn't care about the school aspect of it. It was drinking, and that was all. That was the whole point. Like, I didn't care about school. My whole thought process was to get drunk and hang out with my buddies, and that's it. It quickly led me down the wrong path of no longer being eligible to play, you know, for the second year in a row. You know, and I talk about, it's just like high school graduation when it comes to drugs and alcohol. And like we were just saying, it layer upon layer just continues to grow. And so all of a sudden it was no longer just weed and drinking beer. Then it was bottles of alcohol, vodka, to the hard stuff, until all of a sudden I got asked to start doing the hard drugs. And when you say yes to that the first time, then it's...
Yeah, you mentioned cocaine.
Yeah.
And pills.
You know, I was very lucky in the sense of I did all of that drug use in a matter of about 6 months span.
Wow.
And I was lucky that it didn't continue after that, because look how much trouble and damage I caused in 6 months. And just like I was trying to talk to the players about, you don't realize how fast things are gonna snowball. And all of a sudden I went from this kid from Fort Collins who was a drinker and a partier to hanging out with the wrong people that were wanting to stick people up for drug money.
You mentioned that.
And it's one of those things. Right now, there's no way you would ever see me doing anything to hurt anybody. And I never did when I was drunk or high like that in that sense, but I was with people that were willing to do that because we wanted to get high. And you look back on that right now, for me, I don't understand why I would even put myself in that type of situation. What, you know, and I always ask myself, what would have happened if something bad would have happened one of those nights, and what type of consequences I'd be facing the rest of my life. And those are those things that you don't know what's going to happen, because things start moving so fast, and they always say spin out of control, and things spin out of control really quick. And it doesn't matter if it's alcohol, hard drugs, cocaine, pills, things, you're always chasing that next high.
And you mentioned you even sold your car.
Yeah, I got into a fender bender with my car, and I wasn't drunk or anything like that, and was going to a school and another junior college. And instead of keeping my car and fixing it up and doing all that, I sold it. And I ended up selling it for $5,000 and spent all that money that semester on alcohol. And my car was not worth keeping to me. I would rather drink and mooch off of my friends for rides. And at the time it didn't really like mean a whole lot. But looking at it now, I mean, I sold my car so I could party. And how many people want to sell their car to party? That's an issue.
That's a big issue.
Yeah. And again, I was 19, 20 years old at the time, and I'm not thinking straight. I didn't know that I wasn't thinking I wouldn't have a car the next summer to get around, my hometown. I was only thinking that moment, that next couple of days, what was going to happen, and drinking and all that. So it's those things you don't know what's going to happen, and you don't realize what's going to happen. And it's just it's an ongoing thing.
So take us fast forward to that night in 2003.
2003. Well, you got a few minutes.
Okay.
The coaches are all leaving.
Okay.
2003 was the night of my accident, and I got invited to a house party. And I actually, at the time, kind of slowed down on my drinking and hadn't seen any of my friends for a couple months, and they all wanted me to come out and hang out. And I gave in to peer pressure, even as a 23-year-old. I said, okay, I haven't seen you guys for a while. They said, we're having a house party, we're having a wine and fondue party, and there's some girls that I wanted to date when I was younger in high school, and they said they're gonna be here, so bring some wine. And so I'm thinking, okay, this is gonna be fun, let's do this. And I never drank wine before, and I get to the house party, and I remember pouring 3 glasses and thinking that this was the easiest stuff in the world to drink because it's wine, and I thought it tasted like kiwi strawberry. Like I thought it was. And I just remember my friend saying, hey, you gotta slow down, Fish, because this is gonna hit you in a different way. And I was like, I drink almost every day, so I don't.
What's the big deal?
What's the big deal? This is wine. You see moms and dads drinking wine like it's no problem. And that's the last I remember. Until I woke up in a hospital bed almost 24 hours later and found out from a second nurse that came in and told me that I had gotten into a car and hit and killed an innocent person, drunk driving. And that was the roughest day of my life. I just sat in the hospital bed for I don't know how long in a complete, no words to describe type thing. And yeah, it was tough. But for some reason, when I finally started thinking through things, I knew I had a couple options, and everybody knows that I used to run from my problems, and so my first thought was I was going to run from what had happened. And I had a buddy that lived in another country, and I was going to jump ship.
You're seriously going to run?
Yeah.
Wow.
And I seriously, that was my first thought. And for the second thought, it was, I'm gonna kill myself. I didn't want to live because I didn't want to face what was gonna happen. And for some unknown reason, and I always tell people it was God, and I think he told me to basically take full responsibility for my actions, and that's what I ended up telling myself I was going to do. And from that point in time, I told myself I was going to do everything I could to be the best person I could and take full responsibility for my actions, whether it was good or bad.
And this person was a 57-year-old man?
Yes, 57-year-old man. He was a grandfather, you know, a husband, and, you know, he was just out enjoying the stars, I guess, stargazing, and he didn't even see me coming.
And you were going 70 miles per hour?
Yeah.
You had blacked out, you said?
I have no idea what happened. I've read the police reports. I've driven up and down that road to see if I could jog any part of my memory to see what happened, and I have no recollection of what happened until I was in the hospital bed. And that's this, like I was mentioning earlier, the scary thing about alcohol. You can drink 1,000 times like I did, and one of those times you drink so much you black out, you don't know what's going to happen. And I can honestly say that wasn't even the first time I ever blacked out. I've woken up in some strange places, and that's that scary thing about alcohol. You see it all the time. College kids drink so much they die, they wake up in strange places, they mess up their grades, it's one of those ongoing issues.
So now you're taking your experience, and you have an organization called
Life Consequences.
Life Consequences.
It's a 501c3 nonprofit that basically right now is just a platform and vehicle for me and my story to get to mainly high school athletes, but it's also for any high school that wants to hear my message, because my message isn't just for student athletes, even though it takes place. It's for every student, because every student is going to face these peer pressures, these choices, these decisions, and it's a way for me to get into high schools without having to be one of those typical high-paid speakers that kids can't, like high schools can't afford to have them come in.
Right.
And so the nonprofit is set up so I can speak to smaller groups, and have businesses and individuals donate to be able to help that cause. Because just because the school can't afford a message or something like that, they shouldn't be neglected of what the message is and how to get it to them.
Right.
And we're only a little over a year old in IRS status, but it's slowly growing, and eventually the whole goal is to do 50 high school speeches, and whether they're smaller or larger, 50 speeches a year. And last year I did 18, and this year I'm probably going to get close to 35 or so, and just continually grow.
And I imagine that's your mission, and each time you tell your story, it's not easy. In fact, at the Q&A after your speech, one of the questions was, how often do you think about what happened when that night in 2003? And you think about it several times a day. You can't escape it. So that's one of the things you have to live with for the rest of your life. And thank you for having the courage to turn it around, where a lot of people are probably in your shoes that did vehicular homicide as well, but they're not like you, taking action and speaking, reaching young people where it starts. I mean, even the adults out there right now, need to hear this. And the agents of change there who who get this automatically through your text message and your email, please pass this message on to everybody that you can think of, whether they're sober, they never touched drugs. Everybody's affected by this. We need to be a community and get the message out that there's consequences. And yes, the media, shows that you're having fun, and yeah, you can have it fun socially and everything, but when it starts getting out of hand and you're addicted, like any addiction, you're in the abyss. You don't know what you're doing. So I'm so glad that you shared your story. And before we go, because we're going to get kicked out soon.
Yeah, been here a long time.
Yeah, you mentioned what you had to go through as far as the legal system, and you said it was,
just imagine being in the legal system from 2003 till April 1st of 2014.
Right. It was just a couple of months ago that
we're about to get kicked out.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, she's got to lock the door.
Okay, well, we are getting kicked out, but that's okay. We had this opportunity to talk to Ethan. Ethan, thank you so much. And we hope you are ready to impact more and more people, and we know you are. So we just thank you so much.
Right.
And until our next episode, we thank you for joining us, Agents of Change. And for now, we're going to say aloha.
Aloha.
All right.
Thank you for listening to the Legal Advice in Paradise podcast. For more information, visit www.legaladviceinparadise.com.